Hello student, myself Nimesh Prabhakar. Welcome to Antenna and Propagation lecture series. In this lecture, we discuss about the introduction of antenna, then we discuss about the definitions of antenna, and last we discuss about the function of antenna. So now we start with the introduction of antenna. So first we discuss about the basic importance of antenna, and then we discuss about the history of antenna. So antenna is an important device which has become an integral part of our day-to-day life. We know we use antenna everywhere, like we find antenna everywhere, workplace, on car, vehicle, aircraft, ship, and only then we carry antenna along with us in mobile phone. So we know without antenna wireless communication is not possible. So antenna is important device or important part for the wireless communication. Now we discuss about the history of antenna. So first radio antenna was assembled in 1886 by Henry Hertz. So Henry Hertz is developed first radio antenna in the 1886. Now the laboratory work done by Henry Hertz was further completed by Marconi. Thus the Henry Hertz and Marconi are the pioneer of the antenna. So the main antenna is designed by, or we can say the pioneer of antenna is the Henry Hertz and Marconi. So this is the photograph of the Henry Hertz, who is the pioneer of the antenna. It used the Maxwell equation to develop the antenna. So this is the basic introduction, or we can say the history of the antenna. Now we discuss about the definition of antenna. According to different institutes like IEEE and other institutes and different scientists, antenna is defined differently. Like they have given the different definition of antenna. So now we discuss one by one. So first one we discuss the simple definition of antenna. So the antenna is a metallic device in the form of either wire or rod used for radiating or receiving radio wave. So the simple definition of antenna is a one metallic device that used to radiate or receive the electromagnetic wave. Now we discuss about the second one definition. So according to the IEEE standard, definition of antenna is an antenna or aerial is a mean for radiating or receiving radio wave. So this is a definition as per the IEEE standard. Now third one, antenna can be defined as source or the radiator of electromagnetic wave, because we know that antenna is radiate the electromagnetic wave. So that's why it's defined as the radiator, or we can say the transmitter or the source of the radiation of electromagnetic wave. So this is the definition of antenna. Now next one, we can define antenna as a sensor. Now question come in our mind, how it can define as a sensor? So antenna can be used to sense the electromagnetic wave. That's why antenna is defined as a sensor. Now next one, antenna can also be defined as transducer. So now, how the antenna is defined as a transducer? So we know that what is the function of transducer? Transducer is a device that converts one form of energy into another form of energy. So this same principle is used by the antenna. That means we know the antenna function is what? It converts the electrical signal into the electromagnetic wave. So same as the receiver side, the antenna function is what? It converts the electromagnetic wave into the electrical signal. So that's why we can define antenna as a transducer. So we can define antenna as a sensor, or we can also define antenna as a transducer. Now next one definition. Antenna acts as a coupling device between the generator or transmitter and free space. So we can also define antenna as a coupling device. Now we know that what is the function of coupler is used for the coupling. So here we use antenna for the coupling purpose. For the impedance matching, we can say it matches the impedance of the generator, or we can say as a transmitter, and the impedance of the free space. We know the impedance of free space is 370 ohm. So it matches the impedance of the free space to the impedance of the transmitter. Or in the vice versa, we can say the impedance of the receiver to the impedance of the free space. So that's why we can say the antenna as a coupling device, or we can also say antenna as a impedance matching device. So these are the different definitions of the antenna that we discussed. Now next one. Now we discuss about the different properties of the antenna. So first one property is the equality of impedance. So what is the equality of impedance? So we discuss here the property. An antenna has identical impedance in spite of being used for transmitting or receiving purpose. So here we understand this property. So here this is the antenna. First one is the transmitting side, and the second one we can say here the receiving side. So here the equality property is what? ZA1 is equals to ZA2. That means we use the antenna as a transmitter, and we also use that antenna as a receiver. That means ZA1 is equals to ZA2. Then this is the equality of impedance. So here we can say this is a ZA1, this antenna, this transmitting antenna. We can also use this antenna in the receiving antenna, or we can replace this receiving antenna by the transmitting antenna, and this transmitting antenna we can replace by the receiving antenna. That means we can use this antenna as a receiver, or we can use as a transmitter. So this is the impedance, or we can say this property is known as the equality of impedance. Now we discuss about the next one property. So next one property is the equality of directional pattern. So here an antenna exhibits identical directional characteristic and pattern whether it is used for transmitting or receiving purpose. That means we design one antenna for the transmitting and receiving purpose. Center frequency is the same. So we can use that antenna as a transmitter, as well as we can use that antenna as a receiver, because the directional pattern of this antenna is the same. So this property is known as the equality of directional pattern. Okay, now third one property. Third one property is the equality of effective length. So the antenna has same effective length in spite of being used for transmitting or receiving purpose. So this property is known as the equality of effective length. So what is the effective length and what are the use of the effective length? We will discuss in the next one chapter. That means in the second one chapter in the properties, or we can say parameter of the antenna. In that chapter we will discuss about the effective length. Now third one, we discuss about the function of antenna. So what are the function of antenna? So first one function of antenna is antenna act as a transducer. So what is the meaning of the transducer? So as we discussed in the definition of the antenna, we can use antenna as a transducer. That means transducer is a device that convert the electrical energy into the electromagnetic wave in the transmitting side. Same as in the receiving side, antenna is convert the electromagnetic wave, electromagnetic energy into the electrical energy. So first one function of the antenna is antenna act as a transducer. Now next one function of antenna. Antenna act as a impedance matching device. So here we know that the purpose of the antenna is the use for the impedance matching. So how it matches the impedance? It matches the impedance of the free space to the transmitter, or we can say generator, or same as it matches the impedance of the free space to the receiver. So this is the property of antenna, or we can say this is a function of antenna. It acts as a impedance matching device. Now we discuss about the third one function of the antenna. So the antenna function as a device which can direct radiant energy in a most desired direction and suppress energy in undesired direction. So we can take the example of the Yagi-Uda antenna to understand this point. So we know that the Yagi-Uda antenna is radiate its energy in a particular one direction, because the Yagi-Uda antenna in the last one is used element is known as a reflector. So that reflector is reflect that energy in a particular one desired direction. So that's why it's known as the directional antenna. We can also take the example of the dish antenna. We know that in the feed element we use the horn antenna. So that radiate all energy in a particular one direction by using the reflection principle. So we can say this type of antenna is known as a directional antenna. So that means the function of antenna is what? It suppresses the energy in undesired direction and it reflect or direct in a particular one direction. So this is the third one function of the antenna. Now we discuss about the next one function of the antenna. So this is the antenna act as a transitional structure at the region between the guided wave and the free space and the vice versa. So this is the function is indicate antenna is act as a guided structure. One structure, that means we can say there a metallic structure that act as a transitional structure between the guided wave and the free space wave. So this is the function of the antenna. Now next one function of antenna is the antenna function as a remote sensing device. So in some application, antenna used to measure the temperature of the device. In the industry, there are the many devices that work at a high temperature. So sometimes we cannot directly measure the temperature of that particular device, or we can say the surrounding temperature. So that's why we have to use the antenna. So it measures the temperature and we can know the temperature of this particular event, or we can say in the industry. So this is the different function of that antenna as used. So in this lecture we discuss about the introduction of antenna. Then we discuss second one topic is the definition of antenna. That means we discuss the different definition of antenna according to the IEEE standard, and also different scientists given the definition. And the last one we discuss about the function of antenna. So different function of the antenna we also discuss. So in this lecture we discuss about these three topics. Thank you. Hello and welcome to our channel Electronics and Communication Engineering. Congratulations to find us for learning. You are watching a lecture series on antenna and propagation that has approx 44 sessions and more are coming up. We have more than 1200 sessions in various lecture series on courses for electronics and communication engineering. Watch it and learn. If you like it, share it, subscribe it and press bell icon to receive all updates on new session. Enjoy learning.